Okay, hello, welcome back to the channel. This is going to be an unedited video about drivers and constraints for objects in Blender. So again, this is just a long form, me just rambling, not laid out, not planned, just something that I want to talk about. I'm not really going to look at constraints because there's these amazing videos online that I'll link in the description where someone's gone through every single constraint and used them for exactly what they do. So I'm not really going to go through that, but if you don't know what a constraint is and that doesn't interest you to Google straight away, then basically a constraint can allow two objects to inherit certain things, which is really useful when you're creating large scenes. And the way that it's laid out, I don't know how to do any of this stuff in any other software, but the way it's laid out in Blender is really simple. So it's kind of like modifiers. I can say copy, rotation, and I can immediately pick which cube I want to do that with the little eyedropper, and then um, that one's going to copy this one, sorry. Yeah, so straight away we're limited to, it's a one-way system. I'm not too experienced with them myself. I just know that they're really useful, and I use them in their most basic form to get more mechanical objects without rigging to work in a sense that I know that I'm going to export them as a static object, but maybe if I create something that's mechanical and in the scene, if I've got it set up to mechanically work, even though it's a static mesh, I could re-import multiple variants of that and just have them in their different forms around the level, which will get more, gets rid of repetition, all this sort of stuff. So that's really interesting. The limits on it are really good. I think that it's just laid out really well, and exploring them yourself or watching the videos in the description and comment is super intuitive and easy. So I'm going to move away from them onto the main thing that I was looking at recently, which was, I can't show you the exact examples, but um, a good example might be something like the work that I did a while ago. Now in this scenario, the all of these are separate objects in Unreal. I mean, I didn't import this building here as one object. I just sort of built it in Unreal. The top bit, I think, is one big object, and but the kind of but it's this sort of repetition that in the 3D software that you might want to automate. Um, and if you're going to build a big object to import, maybe you can kind of see how some of this stuff to be built on Unreal. I think these top bits might have been built out on multiple bits, and if I knew that I was building this scene again, then maybe I'd build building blocks that are different sizes. So maybe we've got one that's this size, and then we've got one that's the full size, and then we need these little caps on the top that are red, and then maybe some don't have the caps on the top that are red. And we want all these variations, and we want to set them up in a way to import into Engine that is going to be easy to understand, and it's going to allow, if I need it to be taller, I need more variations, then we can start working on that. So I'll talk about some of that. So straight away, I'm going to very quickly, without explaining what I'm doing, model what is going to be an example of the mesh that we're thinking of. So I'm going to start off with a tall part, which is going to be like our base part, which is what we already had. So what I'm going to do with that is set it up and be similar to what we had. It's going to be a rough approximation of the object in Engine. So delete that. And then I'll delete these back faces as well. So as a rough approximation for the bottom part, I'm just creating a simple thing. Okay, let's take this down to snap it to the vertex. Okay, so I mean, not as well planned out. I mean, the thickness of this is all over the place, and it's not completely the same to what's going on here. That's my representation of that. And then what we also have is a duplicate of that, which after a certain height, being this height, this if we're constructing these buildings, then this is the default height, and that's as low as it can go. And then if we want to build taller parts of the buildings, or parts that slot in, then we've got roof high sort of slots that can fit in that go above this, um, or otherwise just slot in, and that's how it was. And that's how it's constructed in the three in my old scene. Like when I created this, I didn't, I arrayed these upwards and all this sort of stuff, um, which would constrain everything to these sort of heights. So even more variations might want to be used. In which case it gets a little bit more complicated. And then what we're going to do is we've got to arrange these object pivot points. So I'm going to affect origins only. I'm going to grab that one up by 2, or 1 apparently. And I'm going to move this one down to 0. And I'm going to stop affecting origins. What I'm going to do is I'm going to apply the array modifier to this object, because when a building in this scenario is being built, it only increases 1 the height of this object. So I'm going to move it back to 0, and then I'm going to apply transforms. And oh, I put 3 in rather than 1, that's why it's so high. Okay, and I'm going to move this other one out of the way now that we've modeled it, sorry. Okay, so I move that one out of the way. And what we're dealing with is this. Now the array modifier has caps, which is an important thing to mention. And I'm going to mention the cap start to be that, which also needs not all transforms, but I move that back to 0 and apply transforms again. Okay, so we're starting to build something here. Apply transforms, and like I say, cap start is that one, which is going to be moving the origin in a strange way. I think we probably have some overlap here. So it's overlapping with that. So what I'm going to do is I've got to move this down to move it out of the way of this one. So I've moved it down by the amount that the other one had, because the origin point was in the wrong position. I'm going to alt-G that again just to make things a little bit more easier to understand, and then move it up. And then what you would do with these sort of objects that fall off by the side after you've made everything make sense in the scene is just move them into a different collection. So I'll call them master. And now we can have a building we can have parts of a building that can go as tall as we would like them to, based on these caps. And if we were creating variations, then we could grab this, we could duplicate it, and we could allow for a variation like that. So now we've got 3 variations. And then at the end of the day, if we link these up by pressing Ctrl L and the object data, then we can also duplicate a new one with Alt D, which will do the link automatically. And we can just edit them one at a time and say, right, well, actually, I would like a little bit of detail extra on the sides here for these small parts. And then the small parts will all get that additional detail added in, which isn't too clear. So I'm going to quickly apply material for this as well. Go dark, assign it to that part. And the viewport, we want to make sure that we're seeing the material color, which we are. So for some reason that's not working. The color should be based on the material color. So I think there's a separate setting in here somewhere for the in-scene color. Yeah, so in the viewport, we can change the color. I don't usually do that, but there we go. And we want the same material on this mesh as well. So it's a whole lot of setup, but hopefully you appreciate seeing the setup because we're going through it quite quickly. And there we go, we're getting something that's a little bit better. Now we've got all these variations, and the main thing that I looked at recently was, well, okay, we also want we want to create these variations, but we want to add a cap to the end of them. Now the Blender system only allows for one cap, so if I created that red piece that goes to the top of all these, so by, let's say, duplicating this and removing the modifiers, and then just the red bit can be just get rid of this middle section here and look at it from the front. So now the middle part can be just that straight up bit there, and also I'm going to make it 1 meter rather than 2. So we've got this 1 meter little top, which I'm also going to have to move down by a meter to allow it to line up with the origin. And now we've got our final little piece in the block out that we can apply to the top of any of these arrays as an end cap. So now we've got a system that allows us to create a building as tall as we want out of this pattern. And if we want to change anything, for example, I get rid of the array on this because this is my master, and I move it away and move it into the master folder. For example, all right, I've decided something like, oh no, the building, the roof height is too much for these parts when arrayed. So I'm going to move that down. And it doesn't have to follow the meter structure. That's just what I was doing. And then they're all going to update to that height. Strangely, that array has not. The array is still pulling from somewhere else. Maybe that's a bug. Either way, it should update, and maybe that's a bug. And also something I'm overlooking, so I'm going to apply transforms, which I can't do as a duplicate object. Scaled it in mode, so I don't know what's on there. Either way, we make edits and they all update. I think if I don't think there's anything I can do about that. So it's shrunk, but it's shrunk on the. So they're all a little bit different. Now the main thing, the other thing, the final bit after we've done all this setup is to if we want an exact scenario like we see in the video, and we've got all of these. Let's say we build a corner piece out of these in editor, sorry. If we built this rotated corner piece, or if we built this part of the building that's got two of the same heights, but we want that to be all the way around the object um, in editor. If I undo that height change because it annoys me slightly. But okay, if I bring that back up to 2 meters. Okay, so we brought that back to 2 meters. If I want two archways now that can change heights, then what I need to do is duplicate this. And now, in this scenario, I'd have to, if I wanted to change this one to be taller or smaller, I'd also have to go to that one and change it. And then this finally brings me to sort of the main subject of this, which is the drivers that I was looking into. So what we're going to do is we're now going to, in context, look at how I would do that. Once now all the context is out of the way and sort of the problem emerges. And the answer is just super easy, and that's drivers. So we're going to have a master. We're going to have a master wall type. That master wall type can be put into its own folder. Maybe like if we're saying that what we're building here is, if I make a new collection, I say that what we're building here is the main building type. So I type in main building. I move our master and our duplicate into the main building so that we can hide everything else. Then we can name this one our height master. And I can add that into another folder inside that folder and just say master, main building master or something like that, so that it doesn't do that. So now we've got the main building master within these sets, and then name these whatever. And what we want to do is have these, any number of these, inherit the height so that we can build a building out of them. So if I, in this example, also rotated that by 90 and then just moved it vaguely into position, and a cube. Or it'd be easier adding this onto the actual mesh, but we'll see what's going on. I don't want to get too complicated straight off the, if it hasn't been too complicated already. So what we want to do is edit the drivers or add a driver to this. We don't need the initial one to actually have a driver, I think. All we need to do is copy the data path, or yes, just copy the data path. And on the rest of these, we can add the driver or open the driver editor, but we'll go add driver, and then I'm going to open the driver editor because I don't like moving my mouse out of the way. And we're going to, so this is the count array. I don't know programming. I've been around programmers and I sort of know what's going on, but I don't personally, I haven't researched programming or I haven't looked into it, so this is just an artist's understanding. And that's why I'm using the copy feature. So I was copying that because I don't know how to find that exact expression through typing, but I can copy a location and say I want that number to be this. What we're doing is we want a single property from an object. We want that object to be our master. Annoyingly, that eyedropper doesn't work, so that's why the name helps. Our height master is now the object we want to pick. And the path is going to be the array count of that. And now in this example, it's saying add 3 because that was our default value, but we want them just to be the same. And then I'm going to close it. And what I want next is for this one to be the same as the other one. So I'm going to copy that driver, copy driver, and put it on this one. And now it's come up as a driver. We're going to go to the driver edit one more time. And I feel like, so I haven't explained the UI or anything like that because it's Blender UI and it looks like a modifier on the right, and it is sort of, that's what it looks like to me. It's laid out for you all in order. There's very few words on screen. I don't think anyone looking at this should be super confused, although it's daunting going through so many menus. If you actually read what it says, then it's super easy. So the variant var is our variable, sorry, and it's being directly taken by that object to be used, which means when I change this, everything else is going to update, which is just interesting. And that's what I use it for, or what I have used it for. And equally, you could somehow try and collapse objects and things, but then again, the thing that's so good about this is just that that you don't have to collapse things down and create all these parts which do need supporting assets on top. So there's going to be some modeling which you can put over the top of this. But as a base, it's going to lay things out and allow you to create variants, which then you can either in editor or in engine add more objects on top to break up that repetition. The final thing that I did was, now that we know that these heights of these instances are 2 meters, or just about 2 meters, was if I want to add a roof to this by squashing a cube and making it into like a roof shape. So we've got this big roof on top as a mesh, and this is part of the export, like, so same as mine in the scene. It's kind of like it's like a roof that's something along these lines. Okay, so there's my roof. Select by rings or loop, 50-50 rings was the right one to pick. Okay, so there's the top of my thing, my roof that I wanted. So now when I change the height of this, they're all coming out of sync. But I know that the distance that's moving each array is going to be 2 meters. So I want this object that I've created to move up and down by 2 meters each time. So I'm going to start by moving the origin to the base. So it's the origin 3D cursor for the base, and then I know the exact height I want to be at. I'm going to align it with, much as it's not aligned at the moment, I'm going to align it with the lowest height that we can have. Sort of the default. So default height is going to be this. Roughly, doesn't matter if they're overlapping really. And what we're going to do is we're going to increase this number and we're going to multiply that we're going to add that to the default height, which is about 7. So I'm going to call that 7. Makes things easier. So in the object here, because the driver can be applied anywhere, I'm going to go add driver. And whatever it is going to be variable plus 7. So I'm going to get my height master. And I want to say the array number again. So I'm going to change this to a single property. and I want to add the variable that we just did. So I'm not sure if I can just copy and paste here. So what I'm going to do is go back into here and copy that again. Whenever I see it, yep, copy data path. So I've still got this driver on the go. Over here, edit driver, put that in there. I really should be naming these. Now we're doing variant plus 7. So what I want to do is really times the variant by something. So I'm going to put brackets onto it and multiply it by 2, I think, because that's, I think each one of those was 2 or 4 meters. We'll find out. I think it's 4 meters, isn't it? So let's add 4 each time. So that's variant times 4, which isn't going to work. It's adding 4 each time. So, so we'll keep it how it is for now, and we will just test it. So 8 meters. So it thinks that it wants to be an 8 meters because of the plus 1. So what we're going to do, and this is where I really show that I'm not a programmer and I'm just sort of figuring this out, is go to edit driver again. I prefer to do it in the driver editor, so you can keep it up all the time. And our height is going to be, it wants to be 7 by default. So I'm going to do var minus 1. Should do it. Times 7. Plus 7, sorry. And that's not going to work straight away, but it's going to give us the default height that we want. And now we can see that when I go up on this, they're getting out of sync because we're only increasing by 1 at a time. So we need to increase by 4 at a time, which is where I think the var times 4 makes sense. So let's do that on this object. Back to the drivers editor. Minus 1, so var, I don't know if I can do 2 sets of brackets or if it's poor practice or anything like that, but I know some basic maths and that's what I'm going to do. It's var minus 1 still. And that's times 4 on the outside. Plus 7. I think it's times 2 actually. Okay, yeah, so that's 2 meters. And now finally, after all of that, as I increase this, I'm creating a building that is remaining the same height. And everything that I created with it is staying. So then I could, and then what I did in another example is I tied these to the animation because this value can also be animated. So by default, at 0, I want to say that this is 1, and then whatever number later, I can increase this and tie it to 5. And then when I want to see more variants of my model after setting all this stuff up, I can, and then at any point I can just completely get rid of that over there and then grab these and say, well, what it really needs are these, it needs something covering the edges. So what I'm going to do is grab this and extend it, and I'll scale it on the outwards like this. So what I'm saying here is it really needs just something on there just to bridge the gap between them and get rid of the seam. And then that same object would need to be on all the other variants, but we'll ignore that for now. And now we've got this big thing that coming outside, and I'm going to need to copy the object data for them to actually update. Now we've got these seams, and if I know I've got a straight wall like this and need, then I can just still continue and add another array to this, just to. It's going to be at a slightly different rate because if I do it at 1 or -1, then it's not going to work. So I know that I'm going to have to do it at like slightly less, which is a number that I'd have to work out, but I won't do right now. And then I can array this and say all of these in that example are going to be the same. The whole point of this was that you can't always rely on an array like that, because what if you want gaps and you want all these objects to be the same, and then you also want them to inherit a height, which they all do, and then also you want that roof to stay on the object, and so on. And then you can just go crazy with it. I don't know. I think that that's quite a lot of information. I've gone through it pretty quick, and also just generally not explained a lot of things. But googling this more and finding out more about it would be one place to start. And having seen this and been introduced to it, hopefully this is useful and that you can carry on and sort of think about it more. So thanks for watching, and I'll see you in the next video.